The sound of his daughter's laughter was still echoing in Michael's ears when he saw them, 3 young men surrounding a woman at the bus stop, their postures predatory, their intentions clear. In that moment, something inside him shifted. What happened next would change not just his life, but the lives of everyone who witnessed it. Hey there, viewers. Before I continue this incredible true story, take a second to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories that remind us what real courage looks like in everyday moments. Your support helps us share these important messages with more people. Michael Jenkins hadn't planned on being a hero that evening. At 42, his weathered face told the story of a man who had seen his share of hardships. 8 years as a single father after his wife's death had taught him to keep his head down and focus on what mattered, providing for his 12-year-old daughter, Lily. He worked 2 jobs, days as a mechanic at Grayson's auto shop and evenings as a security guard at the local mall. His hands were permanently stained with motor oil, his shoulders perpetually tense from the weight of responsibility. That Tuesday evening had been rare. He'd managed to leave work early to attend Lily's school play. She had landed the role of Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, and the pride in her eyes when she spotted him in the audience had been worth every sacrifice. They had celebrated afterward with ice cream, a luxury they seldom afforded. "Dad, you should have seen your face when I sang Somewhere Over the Rainbow," Lily had giggled, her face smeared with chocolate. "You looked like you were going to cry." "Did not," Michael had protested, though they both knew it was a lie. They were walking home, taking the long route through downtown because Lily loved seeing the shop windows lit up at night. The streets were relatively quiet, a few commuters hurrying to catch buses, some teenagers loitering outside the convenience store, the occasional car passing by. It was that perfect twilight hour when the day's heat had dissipated, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of jasmine from the park. That's when Michael saw them. The woman couldn't have been more than 25, clutching her purse to her chest as she tried to step away from the men. They moved with her, a coordinated dance of intimidation. One of them, tall with a red baseball cap, reached out to touch her hair. She flinched. "Dad?" Lily's voice seemed to come from far away. "What's wrong?" Michael had stopped walking, his body tensing like a coiled spring. He'd seen this before, too many times. In his neighborhood, on the news, in the stories his female coworkers told. Sometimes with tragic endings. "Stay right here," he told Lily, his voice steady despite the adrenaline beginning to course through his veins. "Don't move." "But Dad." "Promise me, Lily." She nodded, her eyes wide with concern. Michael crossed the street with purposeful strides. He wasn't a large man, 5'10" with a lean build, but years of physical labor had made him stronger than he looked. Still, he was outnumbered. The rational part of his brain screamed at him to call the police, to not get involved. But there wasn't time. "Excuse me," he called out, his voice carrying across the evening air. "Is everything okay here?" The 3 men turned toward him, their expressions shifting from surprise to annoyance. The woman used their momentary distraction to step back, her eyes meeting Michael's with a mixture of relief and fear. "Mind your own business, old man," said the one in the red cap, his voice slurred slightly. Michael could smell the alcohol from where he stood. "I'm making it my business," Michael replied, stepping closer. "The lady doesn't seem comfortable." The second man, shorter but muscular, with a tattoo snaking up his neck, stepped forward. "We're just having a friendly conversation. Aren't we?" He looked back at the woman, who shook her head almost imperceptibly. "I don't think so," Michael said. "I think she'd like to be left alone." The third man, who had been quiet until now, laughed, a harsh sound that scraped against the evening quiet. "What are you going to do about it? There's 3 of us and 1 of you." Michael was acutely aware of Lily watching from across the street, of the few passers-by who had slowed to observe the confrontation. His heart hammered in his chest, but his voice remained calm. "I'm not looking for trouble. I just want to make sure the lady gets home safely." The woman spoke then, her voice trembling but determined. I was just waiting for my bus. I don't know these men. Red Cap took a step toward Michael, his fists clenching. You should have kept walking, hero. What happened next occurred so quickly that later, witnesses would give conflicting accounts. Red Cap lunged forward, swinging wildly. Michael, with the reflexes honed from years of working with dangerous machinery, sidestepped the punch and used the man's momentum to push him off balance. Red Cap stumbled, crashing into a nearby trash can. The tattooed man came next, more calculated in his approach. He feinted left before throwing a right hook that caught Michael on the shoulder. Pain bloomed, but Michael managed to stay upright, delivering a solid push that sent the man staggering backward. The third man hesitated, looking between his friends and Michael. In that moment of indecision, something unexpected happened. Hey! A deep voice boomed from down the street. A city bus had pulled up, and the driver, a mountain of a man with salt and pepper dreadlocks, was standing in the doorway. What's going on here? At the same time, two college-aged men who had been watching from outside a coffee shop jogged over. Everything okay? One of them called out. The street, which moments before had been filled with the sounds of confrontation, went suddenly, completely silent. The three harassers, realizing they were now outnumbered, exchanged glances. Red Cap, who had picked himself up from the trash can, spat on the ground. This isn't worth it. Let's go. They backed away, muttering threats that lost their power with each step they took. The woman, still clutching her purse, let out a shaky breath. Thank you, she said to Michael, her eyes bright with unshed tears. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't stopped. Michael nodded, suddenly aware of the throbbing in his shoulder. Are you okay? Do you need a ride home? My bus is here, she said, gesturing to where the driver still stood watching. I'll be fine now. She hesitated, then added, my name is Elena. I work at the library on 5th Street. If you ever need books. She smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her face. Dad! Lily's voice cut through the moment as she ran across the street, ignoring his earlier command to stay put. Dad, are you hurt? That was. I'm fine, sweetheart, Michael assured her, though his shoulder disagreed. Just a little excitement. The bus driver approached them. That was something else, man. You stepped up when most people would have walked away. He extended his hand. Name's Marcus. Michael shook it, wincing slightly at the pressure on his bruised knuckles. Michael. And this is my daughter, Lily. You were so brave, Lily said, her eyes shining with admiration that made Michael's chest tighten. By now, a small crowd had gathered. The two college students introduced themselves as Jason and Eli. An elderly woman who had been watching from a bench shuffled over to pat Michael's arm. Young man, she said, her voice quavering with age, that's what we need more of these days. People who aren't afraid to do what's right. Michael felt uncomfortable with the attention. I just did what anyone would do. But that's just it, Elena said, still standing nearby. Most people wouldn't. They'd look away, pretend they didn't see. As Elena boarded her bus with a final wave of gratitude, and the small crowd dispersed with nods of respect toward Michael, he felt a strange mixture of emotions. His shoulder hurt, his heart was still racing, and yet he felt more alive than he had in years. Walking home with Lily, her small hand clasped tightly in his, Michael reflected on what had happened. He had acted on instinct, yes, but also on principle, the belief that you don't walk away when someone needs help, even if helping means putting yourself at risk. Dad? Lily's voice pulled him from his thoughts. Yes, sweetheart. I'm really proud of you. Her words, simple and sincere, filled a space in his heart he hadn't realized was empty. The story might have ended there, one small act of courage in a world that often seems short on bravery. But 3 days later, while Michael was changing the oil on a Subaru at Grayson's, his phone rang. It was the local news station. Someone had recorded the incident on their phone, and the video had gone viral. "We'd like to interview you," the reporter said. "People are calling you the everyday hero." Michael almost declined. He wasn't comfortable in the spotlight. But Lily, overhearing the conversation, convinced him otherwise. "Dad, maybe it will inspire other people to help when they see something wrong," she argued with the wisdom that sometimes made him forget she was only 12. The interview aired the following week. Michael, uncomfortable in his one good shirt, spoke haltingly about what had happened. "I'm not special," he insisted. "I just couldn't walk by and do nothing." But his simple words resonated. The video of the interview was shared thousands of times. Comments poured in from people who had been in similar situations, both those who had been harassed and those who had intervened. A week later, Michael received a call from a non-profit organization that worked to prevent street harassment. They wanted him to speak at schools about bystander intervention. Again, his instinct was to decline. Again, Lily changed his mind. "You always tell me that we should use whatever talents we have to help others," she reminded him. "Maybe this is your way." And so, Michael Jenkins, mechanic, security guard, single father, added speaker to his list of roles. He wasn't polished or eloquent, but his authenticity touched people. He spoke about courage not as the absence of fear, but as action in spite of it. He talked about the responsibility we all have to one another. 6 months after that evening at the bus stop, Michael stood in the auditorium of Lily's school, looking out at a sea of young faces. Among them was Elena from the library, who had become a friend, and Marcus the bus driver, who now volunteered with the same nonprofit. "I'm not going to tell you it's easy to step up when you see something wrong," Michael told the students. "It's not. It's scary. It's risky. But here's what I've learned: courage isn't something you're born with. It's something you practice, like a muscle. And every time you choose to use it, it gets stronger." As he spoke, he caught Lily's eye in the front row. She was beaming with pride, and in that moment, Michael realized that the greatest gift he could give his daughter wasn't protection from the world's harshness, but the example of how to face it with integrity and courage. The story of what happened that evening at the bus stop continued to spread, inspiring others to intervene when they witnessed harassment or bullying. Michael received letters from people who had found their own courage because of his example. 1 year to the day after the incident, Michael stood at the same bus stop, now marked with a small plaque that read, "Courage is contagious." It had been placed there by the city council as part of a new anti-harassment initiative. As he traced the words with his finger, Michael thought about how a single moment, a decision made in seconds, had created ripples that continued to spread. He wasn't naive enough to believe that one act could change the world, but he had seen firsthand how it could change a corner of it. The sun was setting, painting the street in gold, when he heard footsteps approaching. It was Elena, carrying a stack of books. "I thought I might find you here," she said with a smile. "Lily told me you might be sentimental enough to visit on the anniversary." Michael laughed. "My daughter knows me too well." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching as the streetlights flickered on. In the distance, a bus rumbled toward them. "You know," Elena said softly, "that evening changed my life. Not just because you helped me, but because it reminded me that there are good people willing to stand up for what's right." Michael nodded, thinking of all the ways his life had changed too, the speaking engagements that had given him a new purpose, the community that had formed around the cause, the pride in Lily's eyes every time she introduced him as, "my dad," the one who wasn't afraid. As the bus pulled up to the stop, Michael realized that the most profound change had been within himself. He had always seen himself as ordinary, a man doing his best to get by, to raise his daughter right. But that evening had shown him that ordinary people are capable of extraordinary courage, and that sometimes, all it takes to change a life, or many lives, is the willingness to not look away. The street that had gone silent in that moment of confrontation now echoed with the possibility of a better world, one brave action at a time. So, viewers, as you reflect on Michael's story, remember that heroes don't always wear capes or possess superpowers. Sometimes, they're just ordinary people like you and me who choose to do the right thing when it matters most. If this story touched you or inspired you, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more stories that celebrate the best of humanity. And remember, courage is contagious. Pass it on.